So the three films we talked about were like The Professional, right?
Yeah.
We talked about Vertigo and then Pi.
Yeah. And then as far as and Professional, make sure you're grabbing the Leon the Professional, the other version of it, the full version of it. There's two different cuts of that.
Oh,
There's The Professional, which is the American cut, and then there's Leon the Professional, which is the full cut. It's like 45 extra minutes.
really?
Makes
Wait, is that because like they had to dumb it down for American audiences?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Just make sure you're watching the one that's the longer cut. You can tell by the length, the time, the runtime. Vertigo, Pi, I would say as far as modern score influences, Hans Zimmer with Interstellar, Reznor with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl.
And of course, like I mean, on Blood Brothers, I thought it worked really well, like that kind of Lost Highway vibe.
Lost Highway. I'm gonna write that
Always,
down.
I mean, that's to me, that's always Lynch does a really good job of
Yeah.
building an audio world where you're like completely get into it on top of the visuals.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get credit for it.
That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm gonna do a.
Oh, like if you watch Mulholland Drive,
yeah, Blue Velvet.
Of, like the moods are like they sink you into the scene so quickly.
Yeah. All right, so I'll probably do a Lost Highway, a Blue Velvet, and a Mulholland Drive watch.
Yeah, definitely.
Nine Inch Nails, Ghosts. I'm gonna give that a listen.
That's right. And then you said soundtrack. I mean the score for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah, dude, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is really impressive. I would say that's where whatever formula he came up with that got him an Oscar on Social Network, which I watched all the commentaries with the conversations of Fincher talking about what he was telling Reznor about that time. And he told him very specifically, he was like, don't be afraid of a synthesizer. Don't be afraid of something that throws back to the 70s. Like, don't be afraid of something that triggers that feeling of vintage, which I think would lend to this really well too.
Did you like the Zodiac soundtrack? I mean, the score?
Yeah.
I love that movie.
You said you said the lenses and stuff you pulled.
So they were like, so what happened was 2 years ago, I bought an analog, like an 70, like an analog Canon from one of the first, not first, but like, it's called the Canon A1, which is an SLR, right? A film camera. It was unique because literally it's the first SLR that had a built-in metering and then like a kind of automatic function. You know what I mean? Like when you press it half down, like you can see your f-stop in the viewer, which was like that was a revolutionary concept back in the day.
Yeah.
And the camera is like I use it for photography, but then I found this. I mean, like I did some research and I found that you can take an adapter, slap it on the Canon DSLR, which is a 6D that I had, which is like from it's not even a top DSLR, but it's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
And by combining the two, you get obviously HD video, but filtered through this old school lens that looks kind of unique that I've never.
What's the name of the lens, just so I can watch some videos on it?
So this is a Canon 6D, right?
Yeah, I know the 6D pretty well.
And this is like your regular digital 50 lens. But then, for example, this one is an analog 80, which is a close-up lens, right? By putting this on, you get that close, shallow depth of field, and it has that very like filmic look. Like everything is blurry, but you're like close up. And so I was able, and this is like a variable lens, so I literally switched. Like that film has literally 5 different lenses on it. So one wide, one close up. Sometimes I use digital if I need a detail. So like we kept switching back and forth, one wide angle.
It's really warmth that it's creating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and go for that. I just bought a new synthesizer. I just bought a Moog, which
Oh, good. Like,
perfect timing because you're going for 70s warmth. Like
yeah, exactly.
nothing does 70s warmth like Moog.
Like Clockwork Orange. Yeah, like, yeah.
Totally. I took it. You know what? Let me fucking write that down too.
Music in that is killer too. I mean,
let's do a Clockwork Orange watch tonight. Actually, that I might do that shit tonight.
But yeah, what's in the jar?
This is my tea blend that I do for the daytime. I do genmatcha, which is like a green tea with toasted brown rice. But chamomile tastes like honey, and honey is really good in green tea. So I mix some chamomile in there and then a shot of turmeric, and that's like my day tea.
Right. I drink like peppermint and ginger.
I love mint tea.
Yeah, it's good. Especially at this time, you know.
Yeah, listen, tea's magical stuff, man. Every day. Every day. Okay. Professional, Vertigo, Pie, Clockwork Orange, Lost Highway, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, 9 Inch Nails, Ghosts, Taxi Driver. Okay, so over the next couple days, I'm going to go in heavy on that whole list of films. I'll just have those in rotation.
Great. And then, so you'll just send me samples, or like when you start?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As I start putting stuff together, I'll just send you little things and you can start telling me what's working, what's not. You know, the beauty of that process in the version of this with Fincher and Reznor is that Reznor always goes into it like that too. He's like, let me just watch a bunch of movies and wander, and I'll just send you stuff, and eventually we'll settle into a groove.
Yeah, not just I can try it out and be like, that could work here or here, you know.
Yeah, and just like the last time, feel free to like bend and chop and mutate and reverse, like whatever works. You know what I mean? And eventually it'll organically come into its own thing. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm pumped, man. I'm ready to jump right in.
It's awesome. I think it's gonna be great. Like, you know, I have no doubt that this is gonna work out well. Like,
yeah,
you know, right now I already started doing like researching film festivals, like where this is gonna go, because we want to take it to obviously as far as we can.
Yeah,
it's a topical thing. Like this idea is old, like a couple of years old, but it's kind of addresses the quarantine without. It addresses COVID without actually mentioning it.
Yeah, it's very fit. It's funny. When did you shoot all this?
That's the thing. Like we shot it in August, but literally I came up with this like 5 years ago. So it's not like a new.
Yeah, it's perfect timing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and the weird thing was like you said about his past. We wanted to do a feature length when we're like, the reason he got stuck in the apartment because he was developing this phobia, and he moves into the apartment with his girlfriend. And one day she's like, I'm gonna go. I have to go see my friend, and she never comes back. So that's what shuts the door.
Yeah.
You know, he's like stuck in there, but that's a long version of the story.
Hey, hold on, say that again. So the backstory? His backstory is he was going to see.
No, the backstory is that he's like works for like he's like a book reviewer, and he starts dating this girl who obviously knows that he has this anxiety thing, right? But he's controlling it, right? But every once in a while he loses it, like he loses on the subway one day, and he starts getting more and more selfish, as you do when you have a problem, you know?
Yeah.
She's like very, very supportive at the first, but then later on she's just like, what the fuck am I doing here? And they move into this new apartment, right?
Yeah.
And they haven't even they unpacked half the boxes. And you know, they're engaged to be married, but then she's like, I can't do this, but she's afraid to tell him. So she's basically like, she takes a little suitcase, like, I'm gonna go stay with my friend because she needs some help. Never comes back. So like, literally he had like, he was painting the hallway, and the hallway's halfway done, and he left the what do you call it? Like, and he left the paint dries over like it's just like dried up, and then this is like a year later, so his life was like completely interrupted. Like the hallway looks like it's like halfway done with the paint open and dried up, you know, that kind of stuff. But that's a longer version. You don't see any of that here, but that was kind of
Yeah,
like,
but this is not. This was one of the things. You remember the last time we did this? I asked you for backstory on the characters, and you wrote you wrote me a whole thing about who they were. Like
backstory, I have plenty if you want to see it.
yeah, well, actually, what you just told me is it, and I'll tell you why. For me, what it says, because this guy, like I said, he's not Max from Pi. The what he went through is his love left, so his damage is abandonment.
Yes, and just to add to that, he when he was kid, he was like 4 years old. His father left, right? So the mother raised him by herself, and she always thought he was a weakling. So it's like she was like nurturing him, but like he was already like a very sensitive kid. So it's like he was overbearing mother, and like, you know, and then he finally found the woman of his dreams, and then she abandons him. So it was like this final, you know, fuck you.
This ties into if you are a child of divorce, which I am, and most of my friends are, because that's the time we live in.
Yeah.
Abandonment is your weakest nerve. It's the chink in your armor. It's the thing that hurts the most. It's why when relationships fall apart, that feeling of abandonment hits us even in adulthood. And it's why in your piece, when he sees the child, the purity of childhood that he sees in that girl is what was robbed from him. And it's what has created his psychosis. It's the hope that he sees that saves him. It's why the child is the most important character in your piece, is because her presence and his not rejecting her purity is what allows him to save himself in the end. So whatever score happens, the thing that's going to allow this to hit people, like to affect people emotionally, is going to be some kind of childhood nursery sleep song, some throwback to childhood is going to be what this whole score revolves around.
Wow. Interesting. Do you need more backstory, or does this suffice?
No, I got it. I got it. That's it for sure. There has to be some kind of, you know, when you think of the things that trigger, it's going to have to be uncomfortable. There's going to have to be a dark reference to a child's what's a lullaby. Some kind of reference to a lullaby, but done in a really uncomfortable way, is going to be the key to this score.
Which is the opposite of like the images that I took from the stock footage was all like the 50s normalcy, you know, like child, like growing up healthy, like mother.
Right.
Like, so this is the opposite of that, where all those things are stripped away, you know, like
and that's really what our generation, when they have enough time perspective, when they see our generation, they're like, what was this generation dealing with? What were they damaged by? The failure of the American dream and the death of the American family is our damage. That's our burden. It's what created our dystopia that we live in. The purity of the child is what saves us from that.
Interesting, because I feel like the generation that came after, like millennials, their thing is completely different. Their thing is like safety, of like being safe. You know, they just want to be safe, and it's like, like their problems are not abandonment. I mean, it's the opposite of being nurtured and like hovered over.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a completely different thing altogether.
Yeah,
I actually feel bad for them. It's almost like a worse thing.
Yeah, and I think what inadvertently done in a really awesome way with this piece is you've defined on really a lot of levels. You've defined our dystopia. Like, what's wrong with the moment right now? Look, this is what people are going through this. This is what's wrong. What caused this? How did this empathetic, sweet, loving soul get turned into this?
Yeah, like a monster almost. Yeah.
And socially, what did that to him? Like, and now look at the child. This hasn't happened to her. He doesn't want that to happen to her. He doesn't want that to happen to him. He wants to save himself. Everybody wants to be saved right now. Everybody wants to be happy and safe.
That's what I mean. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, everybody has these expectations of, like, I shouldn't have to suffer. Like everybody should cater to my needs, but it's like nobody gives a fuck about your needs. That's the thing. Like,
right. Right. And that's a key element too, which is it's up to you to save yourself. You have to pull the tape off the door.
I'm talking to Renee, my girlfriend. You met her.
I'm just listening, and I love.
She wants to know what you think about Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Pan's Labyrinth when that hit.
Renee's like an ultimate Pan's Labyrinth fan.
Yeah, I saw that. I was a fan of him before he did Pan's Labyrinth. So when Pan's Labyrinth hit, I watched it immediately, and I was obsessed with it for like months when it hit. And then I bought it as soon as it came out on DVD.
It's actually a good movie to look at because, again, the childhood fantasy.
The score, the lullaby, what you guys were talking about reminds me a little bit about like what you're saying about China.
The lullaby? Yeah. I don't remember the lullaby. I gotta see it again.
Yeah, the element of childhood is what makes the moment of him pulling the tape off not corny. Because if there wasn't an element of hope, he wouldn't save himself. He would be Max in Pi, and he would put a drill in his head. You know what I mean?
Or get the medication and medicate himself into a stupor. You know, this would be like, I don't want to feel this anymore.
Right, because Max is faced in Pi. Max is faced with love. He's given love. Like the girl, the pretty girl that lives in the same building as him, she does actually like have an interest in him. There is an alternate universe where Max opens himself up and goes on a date with this girl and goes out to dinner and is safe.
But
right.
I think so. How do you interpret those? So all the things that he was working on, do you interpret that to be like realistic? Like, it is real. Like, he did invent a system, right? That beats the stock market, or like that guy's system. All that is true. It's just that that's not like the woman coming after him to get the whatever he developed. All that is that he can't handle it. It's not like his whole life. The computer is real. Like that, it really works, right? It's not like he just built up this thing called like.
Well, yeah. Also, and you know, I think there's a moment you'll see the difference illustrated in your thing. There's a moment where she hands him the package, right? That package is more than a package. That package is symbolic of she hands him hope.
Yeah.
There's a moment where for Max in Pi where somebody tries to hand him hope too, and Max is uncomfortable. He hates the world around him. He trusts. He's given up on the world. He's rejected hope. So after he serves his purpose, he sees no place for him anymore. He kills himself. Your character, he accepts the package. He accepts hope. That moment of him taking the package, there's going to have to be some emphasis of that moment because that's his rebirth. He chooses hope. He chooses the new life. He chooses to go on. He pulls the tape down. He's reborn. There's a rebirth.
Part of the thing with Pi is that because he's into math distances you from the real world.
Yeah.
if you see everything as a pattern, then you're not going to be able to enjoy anything.
Right.
It's not like you can't. This guy can supposedly go back to some kind of semblance of
Right.
normal.
You know, I think, you know, with Max, there's always an element of I hate this world and I don't know why I hate it, but I'm gonna analyze it until I understand what it is and how it's created, and then I'm gonna understand why I hate it. And with your character, it's more like I've been beaten up by this world, and that's in turn created this version of myself that I don't know how to get out of. And I need to be shown purity. And in purity, I'm reborn. And when he pulls that tape down, that's almost coming out of the womb. That's almost a rebirth. He's born again. But he has to fight it. He has to push out. You know what I mean? Again, it's a dystopian piece. There's nobody coming to save him, but he knows that love is out there. He knows that hope exists, and he's willing to be born into that. I think that's a big thing with your character.
No, I completely agree. It is an optimistic. I don't want to say optimistic, but hopeful.
It's hope buried in dystopia, and I think that's what we should be telling people right now. That's what people need to hear. Is that yes, it is dystopian out there. No, nobody cares about you, but that doesn't mean that hope and love doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean you can't save yourself and go get it.
Especially,
it's a good time to be saying that.
With a lot of people like being afraid to go outside because of the virus, is like you can go outside eventually. You know, like you can save yourself. It's done before. You know,
there's an element of that buried in the Matrix. Where there's a character that's briefly touched on in the movies, but if you watch the animated stuff that goes outside into the universe surrounding that, there's a whole skit about this kid who he saves himself. And he's an anomaly because somebody didn't pull him out of the Matrix. He died in the Matrix and woke up in reality. And you know, Neo says to him, Neo is a Christ figure. And Neo says to him, I didn't save you, you saved yourself. Don't give me praise for that. And he said, no, but I saved myself because I knew you were out there. I knew hope was there, so I was able to save myself. This is what's going on in your thing too.
No, I agree. And I think that's really what I believe.
Also. Yeah, me too. Me too, for sure. For sure. I live by that, you know. Watch the Animatrix. There's a skit about the kid. Watch the skateboard kid skit in the Animatrix.
The Matrix, okay.
But yeah, hope, childhood, and that buried in dystopia, but obtainable. That's the mindset, I think, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. I got a full fucking. I got a full page of stuff.
If you need anything else, obviously I have all kinds of shit to give you, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So
cool.
But yeah, all right, man. Just just let me know what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna focus on the child first. But listen, man, I'm gonna jump in and we'll talk soon.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I'm excited to jump in. Later, dude.